Well, one company leading a seed stage investor for agro and clean technology. Another, one of the top business development and strategy firms in its country. And the third focuses on developing biotech and pharmaceuticals companies and was just named the Business Incubator of the Year. All three of these companies are actually divisions of one larger company focusing on developing new business, which is where we know the vast majority of the new jobs come from. This company, Trendlines, is leading the globe in innovation and helping to launch startups at an incredible rate. But here's the rub, at least if you're an American, they're in Israel. Joining us to explain why this is working in Tel Aviv but doesn't seem to be happening in New York or D.C., the CEO and chairman of the Trendlines Group, Todd Dollinger. And Todd, it's a pleasure. What you describe as sort of a classical Western capitalist model of investment and elbow grease and business development. Why do you think it is, or why, in your case, is it that this was so prosperous and so effective in Israel? And do you think that the model that you're working with would work in a country like the United States?
Well, the short answer, first of all, is yes. I think that we have a model that is exportable. As to why it exists the way it is, the way it does, and why we are what we are, candidly, part of it's environmental. We don't have the environmental advantage in America of having a great startup tradition that's been around here for so long, but what we do have, well, we could say it this way: Israel is a wonderful little country and a really crappy little neighborhood. I think when you combine the elements that we face every day living in Israel, and you look at what the assets are, you almost have to go this way. What do we have? We have, to some extent, we have intellectual abilities. We certainly aren't rich in other natural resources. So you start there.
And so your point is that from an Israeli perspective, as a businessman, creating a future is the best path forward.
The understanding, I think, since the origins of the state, but particularly in what we're talking about here for the last 20 years, it really focuses on a need to create jobs. This was very real. It was very much understood. And you go back to the beginning of the 90s when the former Soviet Union unwound with this tremendous immigration in Israel. It was actually my family moving to Israel from Kansas. That was 5 of us. And what seemed at the time like billions of Russians and Ukrainians. Well, it wasn't billions, but it was a tremendous impact. And the government established a program. Now, I don't like to speak well of government, but they did a right thing here. This is public policy at its best.
Go ahead, Imogen.
Well, it's exactly sort of on those lines. I was at a business event recently and one of the business leaders was talking, and he was saying here in America there's too much red tape and not enough red carpet. And what you seem to be saying from the Israeli government's perspective is that they are giving you that red carpet.
That's a wonderful expression. Thank you for sharing that. And
I stole it off somebody else, but yeah.
It works. It works. Let's go with it. I think it's fair to say that, yes, there is a substantial red carpet. This program, instituted by the government in 1991, creates in the range of 80 or so new companies every year, and it's in areas where the country can succeed. This is in medical electronics. This is in various kinds of medical devices. This is in agriculture. And yes, it is red carpet. There is some red tape. After all, it is a government, but it's worth it.
What about capital? I mean, you obviously have intellectual capital. You mentioned the emigres from the former Soviet Union and the great emigres from Kansas, like yourself. But so you have intellectual capital. What about capital? What about money? I mean, how are you funding these things? And then a sort of corollary to that is, how do you exit them? Because obviously you're a capitalist and you hope to build companies and make them great and make a lot of money when you send them off on their way. Do you have a capital market that allows you to do that?
I am a card-carrying capitalist. You've caught me there. It's true. Your question on capital, it's a great question, because this is actually the great differentiator between the American model and the Israeli model. There are some 1,500 business incubators in this country, and there's a very small number that get involved with the financing of the companies in depth. And by that I mean to say they write checks. They actually invest in the companies. The Israeli model is we invest. We have today about 25 companies that are located in our facilities. They're companies that are 2, 3, 4 years old. These are companies that we've all invested in and support.
Hotel type concept.
Yeah, very much so. But we're providing all sorts of support to these companies. One is writing a check. This is critical, and this is also where the government comes in. We can start as many companies as we start every year because the government supports our activities. We invest, we support, and our contracts with the government, we have contracts where we agree to provide levels of support and to invest in companies, then they come in and invest alongside us, and they make this possible. Critical issue.
Jonathan.
Todd, here in the United States, there's always a complaint that the federal government gets into the business of choosing winners and losers, and that ends up bogging the whole process down in terms of, to my mind, in terms of innovation. Are there those same pressures in Israel? Is that even a concern, the government getting involved in picking winners and losers?
I think it's an issue of partnership. It's a great question, and the government does get involved, but here's how it happens. When we're approached by an entrepreneur and we want to take a look at the opportunity, we go through a diligence process that's not unlike what you'll see with any venture firm. We do that, and then the government comes in if we want to take government funding. The government chooses in Hebrew, a bodek, an examiner who will come in and evaluate the company, interview our staff who've done diligence. They will interview the entrepreneur. They will look at the market, and this is done independently.
Does he take money on the side?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because that would seem like a good job to take money on the side. You know
well, you really are an entrepreneur.
Well, I'm just saying that's how they do it here. I mean, that's how our politicians do it. It's how our judges do it. So, I just didn't know if they do it
there, too. Corruption is not unknown to Israel. Within this program, I've actually never seen any of it. Zero. And I've been involved in the program.
I mean, the real question, I guess, where the rubber meets the road is how would you define the success of the actual businesses you developed, and sort of to what would you hold out as the model of what you would aspire to when you make an investment?
Well, the metrics are, it's all about the numbers, and here we go back to your question about what about the exits. And this is our focus. When we're looking at an investment opportunity, we're evaluating it from many different angles, but in truth, before we ever write a check, we're looking at where's the exit. We have to do that. That's what we're in business for. Last year, we took 2 companies public in Tel Aviv. This year, we had a wonderful exit from one of our companies sold to an American company. And the exit typically is in the U.S. This is where the acquirers are. It remains, in spite of difficulties in the economy, an acquisitive situation.
Which actually brings up something interesting, because we talk on this show, and a lot of the American political media in general, even the financial media, will blather on about Greece and the debt crisis and, oh my God, and what are they going to do? At the end of the day, what you really need is a functioning capital market where entrepreneurs can form businesses and then can actually raise capital for those businesses and then actually create exits for the people doing that. And I guess my question to you is, how disruptive has the entire sort of financial crisis sequencing, the swaps market, all the unknown risk been to your sense of a stable, functioning capital market?
We operate most specifically within the seed stage, very early stage. And then that's really what I want to address. So with apologies, I'm only going to address part of your question here.
No, that's fair.
In this section, something interesting happened. We saw it happen in 2008, and we've seen it happen again now, which is that the valuations of the companies at the earliest stages, and here we're talking about companies that may be worth less than $10 million, right. There's not a precipitous drop. What does happen, though, is we continue to be challenged by the need for early stage capital. This is not going to go away. Take a look at what the VCs are doing. And by the way, venture capital is second in Israel only to the U.S. Venture capital in Israel is bigger than Germany, the UK, anywhere else. It's extraordinary. But early stage, seed stage capital, the VC model, which certainly has difficulties, as you know, they want to invest after the exit now. Certainly mezzanine. So they're nowhere near us on the spectrum.
Who doesn't want to invest after the exit?
It's what I'd like to do.
I think that's called taking bribes. You know what I'm saying? It's investing after the exit. Anyway, Todd, it's a pleasure. Nice to see you. Congratulations not only on your business, but thank you for sharing, I think, with all of us. Rob, pleasure. Imogen, always a pleasure. Jonathan, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for playing. Next, the latest fraud being perpetrated on America. It's not just, well, you'll hear about that.